Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Schedule X titled Inside. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen here. We've got the art up here on Spotify. This is also available on all other digital streaming platforms. Apparently we have members Adam Smith on vocals, as well as Nathan Huerta on guitars and effects, Ventura Madrid on bass synth, and then finally we have Justin Robertson on drums and kits. And I should note that apparently these guys were active back in the 90s, they're doing music then, and they're actually releasing some music now, which is pretty cool. This is one of the songs. We're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go. Got some cool kind of synthia sequences going on. Got a kind of wavish feel to it, doesn't it?
If you wanna know what came inside, something that takes up all our time, do you a favor and leave my life. Your skin is eating inside and all over. I feel your rain when giving over. So die with me, 'cause I believe that you're a liar. Straight up and feel in vain. So die with me, I know you're lying.
Great vocal fry.
Happy inside of. I'm dying inside of. Clearly I see what happens to people like to smoke and think and drink like me. I'm not watching, I don't wanna see it inside. And everything she found is standing now. Tell me if all this wants to see one thing, to see what's inside. So die with me, 'cause I believe that you're a liar. Straight up and feel in vain. So die with me, I know you're lying. Be the happy inside of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should choose dying inside of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should choose dying inside of. 'Cause dying inside of.
I like kind of how spacey it sounds.
So die with me, 'cause I believe that you're a liar. Straight up and feel in vain. So die with me, I know you're lying. Be the happy inside of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should choose dying inside of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should choose dying inside of. Who's dying inside of? Who's dying inside of? Who's dying inside of? Who's dying inside of? Me.
Great use of repeaters on the end with the vocal take there. There's a lot to appreciate within this track. We're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Schedule X titled Inside. In this section, I'm going to be providing an overall song analysis from vocals through to production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. I should also note that I've given this song an overall score of 8.8 out of 10, which is very high for me. I don't usually give scores over 8, but I just feel like there's a lot of really cool stuff going on within this across the various facets, and I'm very, very happy with what I've heard. So before we go any further, what do we think this track is about? Truth be told, I'm kind of 50-50 and I'm not entirely sure. We call the person, die with us if they're not a liar. Is it basically they're looking at the people around them, trying to sort of get a gauge of who they are. They've had stuff revealed to them by her. So maybe they're expecting the person they're discussing this with to commit to them in order to sort of truly either understand them or kind of be with them. It's tricky. I feel like I need more time with this song to really kind of get it. I like, though, that I don't necessarily understand it on the first listen basis there. I like that there's more reason to hear it, then they're going to listen to more of it. They talk about dying inside of people or something like that, or dying inside of themselves. I'm not sure. I feel like there's more than meets the eye with this one, and I kind of like the fact that it's very curious. They're not, spoon feeding you or holding you by the hand there, you're encouraged to learn more. I feel like the vocal performance is I'm really happy with the vocal performance. We just effortlessly go between our head, chest voice and our falsetto there in a way that's very tuneful and works well as a similar kind of pitch and texture and timbre to a lot of the synth lead, including the guitar solo part that we have a bit later on there. Just very sort of charismatic. The lows to highs are reached. We have bits of vocal fry occasionally for extra emphasis and oomph there, and it's just a very enjoyable performance. And I also like the fact that we don't rely on the vocals as a sort of a main crutch and lead element throughout there. We're happy to allow the synth layers and various other sort of melodies and subs there to kind of have their time in the sun as well there. It's great that, especially in a track where it's 3 minutes 36, we're singing in a way where we really sound like we're calling out. There's exasperation, there's like more of a conversational tone. In other parts, such as in the verse sections where we're sort of more down the range there, we express ourselves really eloquently, even if it's not immediately obvious to what we were discussing. And we have ornamentation and elaboration on various elements there, with bits of sort of like fanciness vocally with legato tails and various parts there without outshining the rest there. It's a part of the ether. But yeah, we have different verses and chorus parts and like a solo section there and instrumental breaks, and it's really well structured. It's right within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where if it's less than 2 minutes, you might not have necessarily done enough cooking with it to fully sort of like branch out and explain the original context. If it's longer than 4 minutes, you really need to sort of like change things up and keep things interesting in order to not overplay the main sort of theme or concepts you're putting forward. And yeah, we have fantastic, really effective transitions between elements there. We have different alt leads that are introduced, whether, again, it's the vocals for storytelling or the hook sections for a bit of catchiness with perkiness. With the vocals and synth layers, I think, being equally sort of charismatic and charming. It's very energetic in a very kind of fun, perky way. But yeah, even from the start there with those synth pads, the sequences, the kind of low, kind of like almost bassish, kind of sub-bassish kind of thing going on, is very kind of cinematic. And when you look at that album art there, and it kind of does remind me of a lot kind of like sci-fi films and stuff like that. That kind of, again, kind of like the new wave kind of movement of the 80s. It's just great because it's very fashionable at the moment. I like the Schedule X have kind of bought into that, kind of pushing that forward, but not in the way where it's generic or kind of just token, I suppose. When we have the drums come in and they've got this sort of great samples and tones, they're very sort of chipper sounding with an eighth note accent or like groove with the hi-hats, the kicks and snares, accenting the quarters. And there's very kind of pretty sounding wavery kind of like synth leads on top there, dancing through the higher end of the frequency spectrum there. It's just very kind of pleasant, especially when you've had that kind of low effect. Especially around that 80-second mark, you can hear things moving around the stereo field there. It wavers there. It's not just that there are obvious notes. There's bits of production and post there which kind of, again, affect the lower end of the frequency spectrum. And it seems like waves going over top of you. It's very cool. And we don't just rely on beats either. We have syncopated sort of kick elements there and adjustments of the grooves there. A lot of different drum fills and patterns there. We are spoiled with the percussion. I like the rototoms and other elements we have across the kit. It's just great to not just rely on a main sort of like pattern there. It's great to have variations to either segment different parts of the track or, suggest different flows of emotions or anything like that. And we also have awareness of how it rolls along with like the bass or synth elements or pads and so guitar parts as well. I think when the vocalist is down their range in the verse parts, it's nice to have again those sequences kind of in time with the synth sequences in time with the hi-hats. There's great rhythmic unison, but then things aren't constant. You have little pauses with today, like I can't sing like he can clearly, but you have that break there, dum dum dum, and then the toms come in, and it's a great transition with a huge sound of the pads on the sides of the stereo field, just brr, brr. And they're very kind of simple, not overcomplicated chords that are performed there, but they just sound huge because of how everything is working together. But there are other little bits of kind of rhythmic articulation and really cleverness, like dum dum dun dun dun. We aren't just again relying on even quarters, eighths, triplets, or sixteenths for the drum kit there. We explore faster parts there. Occasionally though, it's more about the pace or groove than anything like that. We're pushing forward but not leaving listeners wanting. And when we go into the falsetto and those end of the chorus parts there, we adjust the speed of the hi-hats for an extra bit of urgency there, but it's like half of the time for the loops as well. Like, these little intricacies are fascinating, man. There's a great attention to detail. I think the trade over to the electric guitar solo around the 2:20 mark is tasteful. It's got a great sort of lush tone to it that isn't too alien from a lot of the synth leads that we've had prior to it, but that is kind of distorted and kind of fizzy enough to be distinct as a guitar. You have great vibrato and sort of like slide technique, and we have hammer-ons and pull-offs and all sorts of fun stuff. I think there's even some sort of like tapping stuff or kind of sweep picking stuff going on there with the part there. It's great to adjust the meter and cadence of those solos to not just be reliant on what the vocals have previously put forward there. We're trying to make the guitar solo its own thing there. You know, it's been very patient up until that point, but nope, it's time to shine. But it does so in a way where it develops rather than it just blows everything out within the first few seconds. And there's great call and responses outside of the guitar solo, which is really well played there. I like that we could have probably had enough with the synth leads and the vocal part. Just having an alternate guitar lead there, we really are spoiled. But yeah, the alternate synth leads in various parts of the track, we have different tones and textures. It's just nice to have these kind of key melodies that either call and respond with the main vocal parts or are just their own kind of, and especially because they're niched, they're not in the same range. Often the vocalist is sort of lower than those synth pads there to deliberately add contrast to it, so you can hear everything clearly, not be overwhelmed. Ending part there is a fun one though, me. It's very kind of like, you get that me part and it almost kind of clicks in a certain extent there. You're focused on that me part and it's like, oh, dying inside of, and they never kind of conclude that. You get that resolution and you're left to ponder it with the fade outs until you go into the next track. What I'm trying to sort of say is that they're kind of teasing you a little bit with some of those kind of like pauses and not finishing certain lines, and it kind of encourages or incentivizes you to listen through the rest of the track, even if, especially if you're like passively listening, to then kind of hear what's going on at the end. But overall, instrumentally very compelling, great balance of different sort of bass, synth, guitar, and drum parts there, pads and sequences, and more sort of atmospheric, sort of ambience correlated effects there. I like the tones and textures, such as again, like the use of toms, not just from a production perspective, actually the choice of those tones there to illustrate or sort of niche back to again, maybe the 80s kind of styling that we're going for there with sort of more modern production elements, should I say. And thematically, I just think the minor leaning is kind of subtle there. It's like when there's such an amount of vigor and brightness to the overall extent of the track that we're almost sort of celebrating it to an extent where it almost kind of becomes a bit melancholic. It's an interesting experience that I have listening to this here, trying to sort of define the relative mood of it. Like I can hear the exasperation in certain parts here and the tiredness and the frustration that they feel, and I can understand the resolution to the minor chord at the end, which makes it a minor key. But it's complicated because some of the inherent extensions with the combination of different notes and how they come together, it's a really sophisticated. But I think it's more about the instrumental choice, the textures, the atmosphere or style that they wanted to create, and how it reflects the vocals. That's more the kind of like the vibe in combination with just a really well handled instrumental and vocal performance. It's fun whilst being sad, I suppose, for lack of a better word. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering is well handled there. I think that you can hear the different vocal, sort of like guitar lead and kind of like lead, synth lead parts, as well as the bass and drums really clearly in the mix. You know, music surrounds you in headphones. There's like manipulations of the intensity, perceived intensity of certain parts, even if they're not kind of blunt notes. The toms go around the sides at stereo field. You go, you know. And when there are moments that are more sort of low key, you know, you hear the vocals in the center, and then when the pads come in like that kind of bridge section, they go, you know, explodes there. There's compositional dynamic range as well as production dynamic range. Things aren't the same loudness. It's nicely sidechained, bus compression limiting's handled, and I just feel like the vocal performance, whilst there's a bit of like processing on it, it's not to help it, it's more to stylize it than anything else. You can clearly sing, pipes are good, fantastic effort all around. No applicable constructive critique, it's a fantastic isolated concept and a fantastic first impression to their music. From a general listener's perspective, I'm really impressed. I like this kind of music, and I'm always kind of concerned when I hear stuff I'm familiar with and wondering how they're going to put their own kind of tint on it. I think if we hadn't had that guitar solo there, even though I know there was guitar solos, a lot of guitar solos in the 80s, I just feel like it would have been a little bit too close to like a lot of modern pop music, for example, that does use those kind of main sort of drum, bass, and synth elements. I do dig that we put our own spin on it, told our own story there, whilst again, like working with ingredients that we were very comfortable and happy with, and that again are in vogue right now. Ultimately, yeah, fantastic time. Thank you for watching my review of this track from an act named Schedule X, titled Inside, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show us some love via the various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.